Story 1. The Candyman. I'm 26 now, but this happened when I was just 10 years old. Back in 2009, Halloween was always my favorite holiday. My neighborhood, a quiet, tree-lined suburb with manicured lawns and friendly faces, transformed into a wonderland of spooky decorations. Every house was a potential treasure trove of candy, and my best friend, Alex, and I had our trick-or-treating route meticulously planned. We'd start at Mrs. Henderson's, who always gave out full-sized candy bars, then hit the houses with the best decorations, and finally, loop back to our street before our parents started calling us in. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and pumpkin spice, a perfect autumn evening that promised adventure and sugary delights. We were buzzing with the kind of boundless energy only 10-year-olds possess, our plastic pumpkins swinging with anticipation. That year, a new family had moved in a few blocks over, on Elm Street. Their house was a classic Victorian, a little run-down but with a certain charm. We hadn't seen much of them, just a few glimpses of a man in his late 40s or early 50s, always wearing a faded baseball cap, tending to his overgrown rose bushes. On Halloween night, their house was surprisingly dark. No lights, no decorations, just a single, flickering porch light that seemed to cast more shadows than illumination. Alex, ever the brave one, dared me to go up to the door. "Maybe they just forgot to turn on the lights," he whispered, his voice a little too loud in the quiet night. We approached cautiously, our plastic pumpkins clutched tight. As we got closer, we noticed a faint, sweet smell, like burnt sugar, and something else, something metallic. It was unsettling, but our 10-year-old minds were more focused on the potential candy. Alex knocked, a timid rap that echoed in the stillness. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing the man we'd seen in the yard. He was taller than I remembered, and his eyes, even in the dim light, seemed to hold a strange, almost vacant stare. He didn't smile. He didn't say trick or treat. He just stood there, a large, clear plastic bag in his hand, filled with what looked like homemade lollipops. They were oddly shaped, some perfectly round, others misshapen, and they shimmered with an unnatural, almost iridescent sheen. "Take one," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. Alex, always eager for unique candy, reached in and grabbed a bright blue one. I hesitated. There was something about the man, the smell, the strange lollipops, that made my skin crawl. My gut screamed at me to run, but Alex was already unwrapping. A look of pure delight on his face. "It's blueberry," he exclaimed, popping it into his mouth. I felt a strange pressure to conform, to not seem like a scaredy cat. So, I reached in, my fingers brushing against the cold, hard candy, and pulled out a green one. It felt heavier than it looked. We thanked him, our voices barely above a whisper, and hurried away. As soon as we were out of sight of the house, I tossed my lollipop into a nearby bush. Alex, however, was still enjoying his seal. He said it was the best lollipop he'd ever tasted. Within minutes, though, his cheerful demeanor began to change. He became unusually quiet, his movements sluggish. His eyes, normally bright and full of mischief, seemed to glaze over. He stumbled once, almost falling, and when I asked if he was okay, he just mumbled something incoherent. A cold dread began to settle in my stomach. This wasn't normal. This wasn't Alex. We were only a few houses away from my place when Alex suddenly stopped. He swayed for a moment, then collapsed onto the sidewalk, his eyes rolling back in his head. His breathing became shallow, ragged. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound that brought my parents rushing out of the house. They took one look at Alex, his face pale and clammy, and immediately called an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly, their faces grim as they worked on him. They found the half-eaten lollipop still clutched in his hand. At the hospital they ran tests, and the doctors confirmed our worst fears. The lollipop contained a potent sedative, strong enough to knock out an adult, let alone a 10-year-old. The police were called, and they immediately went to the Victorian house on Elm Street. But the house was empty. The porch light was off, the door was locked, and there was no sign of the man or his family. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The neighbors said they hadn't seen anyone move in or out, and the house had been vacant for months. The real estate agent confirmed it. The house had been on the market for nearly a year. There was no record of anyone living there, no utility bills, no mail. It was a ghost house, a facade that had appeared only for Halloween night. Alex recovered, thankfully, but the incident left a permanent mark on both of us. He still has nightmares about the taste of that blueberry lollipop, and I can't look at homemade candy without a shiver of fear. The police never found the man. They searched. They investigated, but there was no trace. It was as if he was a phantom, a creature of Halloween night, who materialized just to offer a poisoned treat. To this day, I can't explain it. Was he a squatter, a transient, or something far more sinister, something that preyed on the innocence of children on the one night of the year when they are encouraged to take candy from strangers? The house on Elm Street remains empty, a dark, silent monument to a Halloween night that went horribly wrong. And every year, when the leaves start to turn and the air grows crisp, I can still smell that faint, sweet, metallic scent, a chilling reminder of the Candyman and the disturbing truth that some horrors are not just stories, but real, unsettling events that leave you forever changed. Story 2, The Midnight Caller. It was Halloween night, 2018. I was 22, a college student, home for the weekend, and my friends and I had decided to relive our childhood by hitting up a few of the more elaborate Halloween parties in our old neighborhood. We'd started at Sarah's, then moved to Mike's, and by around midnight, we were walking down a dimly lit street, the air thick with the scent of decaying leaves and distant bonfires. The party at Mike's had been a bust, too many strangers, too much loud music. We were looking for something a little more low-key, a place to just hang out and talk. That's when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said, my voice a little slurred from the cheap punch at Mike's. There was a pause, then a low guttural growl on the other end. It wasn't human, it sounded like an animal, but distorted, as if it were coming from deep within a cave. My friends, walking a few paces ahead, turned to look at me. "Who is it?" Mark asked, his breath misting in the cool night air. I shook my head, my heart starting to pound. The growl continued, then a series of clicks and whistles, like some kind of strange, alien language. I felt a prickle of unease, a cold sensation crawling up my spine. "Wrong number," I mumbled, and hung up, but then it rang again. The same unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. This time, there was no growl, just heavy, ragged breathing, as if someone was running, or struggling. Then, a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. "I see you." My blood ran cold. I looked around, frantically scanning the darkened street. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows, making every bush and every parked car seem like a potential hiding place. My friends were still looking at me, their faces etched with concern. "What's going on?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with worry. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by a sudden, overwhelming fear. The call disconnected. My phone vibrated almost immediately with a text message. It was from the same unknown number. The message was just a single word: closer. I showed it to my friends, and their faces went from concerned to terrified. We started walking faster, our casual stroll turning into a hurried pace. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch, sent a jolt of fear through me. We kept looking over our shoulders, but there was nothing. Just the empty street, the silent houses, and the unsettling feeling that we were being watched. Then, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, the unknown number flashing, a beacon of dread in the darkness. It rang and rang, an incessant, mocking sound that echoed in the quiet night. My friends urged me to turn it off, to throw it away, but I couldn't. I was transfixed, caught in a terrifying game of cat and mouse. Finally, it stopped. A moment of blessed silence. We all exhaled, a collective sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. Another text message. This one was a picture. A picture of us, from behind, walking down the street. The picture was taken just moments ago. We could see the back of my head, my phone held up to my ear. We could see Mark's distinctive red hoodie, Sarah's long blonde hair. The picture was clear, too clear, as if the person taking it was right behind us. Panic set in. We broke into a run, our feet pounding on the pavement, our breath coming in ragged gasps. We didn't know where we were going, just away from the unseen presence that was stalking us, away from the chilling reality that our Halloween night had turned into a living nightmare. We ran until our lungs burned, until our legs ached, until we finally reached the brightly lit main street, where cars were still driving by and people were still out and about. We huddled together, gasping for breath, our eyes wide with terror. My phone rang again. I looked at it, then at my friends. "Answer it," Mark urged, his voice trembling. "Maybe we can I answered. This time, there was no growl, no breathing, no whisper, just a faint, almost imperceptible sound, a sound like a camera shutter. Click. Then, a voice, distorted and mechanical, like a text-to-speech program. "Happy Halloween." The call ended. We stood there, frozen, the words echoing in our minds. We never received another call or text from that number. We never saw anyone following us. The police, when we finally reported it, were sympathetic but ultimately helpless. There was no evidence, no trace of the caller. They suggested it was probably a prank, a sick joke by someone with too much time on their hands. But we knew better. The fear, the sheer terror we felt that night, was too real to be a prank. It was a violation, an intrusion into our sense of safety, a chilling reminder that even in a crowd, you can be utterly alone and utterly vulnerable. To this day, I still get a shiver down my spine when my phone rings with an unknown number. And every Halloween, when the air grows cold and the shadows lengthen, I can't help but wonder if the midnight caller is out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, for another unsuspecting group of friends to turn their backs to the darkness. The experience left us with a profound sense of unease, a lingering paranoia that the world isn't as safe as we once believed. It was a Halloween night that stripped away the innocent fun and replaced it with a chilling understanding of how easily the familiar can become terrifying, and how a simple phone call can unravel your sense of reality. Story 3. The Scarecrow. This happened last Halloween, 2024. I was spending the night alone at my uncle's remote cabin in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. He'd gone on a hunting trip, and I, a 20-year-old aspiring writer, saw it as the perfect opportunity for some uninterrupted solitude to work on my novel. The cabin was rustic, no Wi-Fi, spotty cell service, just me, my laptop, and the vast, silent woods. The only decorations for Halloween were the natural ones, the skeletal trees, the rustling dry leaves, and the occasional hoot of an owl. It was exactly what I needed. Around dusk, as the last sliver of orange faded from the sky, I noticed something new in the field adjacent to the cabin, a scarecrow. It hadn't been there that morning. It was crudely made, a burlap sack for a head, stuffed with straw, wearing an old, faded flannel shirt and torn jeans. Its arms were outstretched, held up by a crossbeam, and it stood perfectly still, a silent sentinel against the encroaching darkness. I figured my uncle had put it up before he left, maybe to deter some deer from his small vegetable patch. It was a little unsettling, standing there so starkly against the twilight. but I dismissed it as a quirky addition to the rural landscape. I settled in for the night. The rhythmic tapping of my keyboard the only sound in the cabin. Around midnight, a sudden, sharp rap on the window startled me. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. It sounded like a knuckle hitting the glass, firm and deliberate. I slowly turned, my eyes scanning the dark window. Nothing, just my own reflection, staring back. I told myself it was a branch, or maybe a large bird. The wind had picked up, and the old cabin creaked and groaned around me. I tried to go back to my writing, but my focus was broken. Every shadow seemed to deepen, every creak seemed to echo, with a sinister intent. Then, I heard it again. This time, it was a scraping sound, coming from the front porch, like something heavy being dragged across the wooden planks. I grabbed the old, rusty poker from beside the fireplace, my hand trembling. I crept towards the front door, my breath held tight in my chest. I peered through the peephole, but it was too dark to see anything clearly. The scraping stopped. Silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that pressed in on me from all sides. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, listening, waiting. Finally, I convinced myself it was just my imagination, fueled by the isolation and the spooky atmosphere of Halloween night. I went back to my desk, but I couldn't write. The cabin felt different now, no longer a sanctuary, but a cage. I must have drifted off, because I woke with a jolt to a loud thud from outside. I scrambled to the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. The scarecrow, it was no longer in the field. It was standing directly in front of the cabin, its burlap head tilted slightly, as if looking directly at me. The moonlight cast an eerie glow on its form, making its outstretched arms seem even more menacing. It was impossible. It had to be the wind, or some trick of the light, but there was no wind. The air was still, heavy with an unnatural quiet. I stared at it, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. It was closer than before, much closer. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, its head turned. Just a fraction of an inch, but enough. Enough to confirm that it wasn't the wind. It was looking at me. I backed away from the window, my legs like jelly. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a signal, for any connection to the outside world. Nothing, just the dreaded no service message. I was trapped. Trapped with a scarecrow that had moved, a scarecrow that was watching me. I spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner, the poker clutched in my hand, my eyes glued to the window. Every shadow seemed to shift. Every creak of the cabin seemed to be the sound of it approaching. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The sun finally rose, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, and the cabin was filled with light. I cautiously approached the window. The scarecrow was gone. The field was empty. It was as if it had never been there. I packed my bags immediately, not even bothering to clean up. I drove straight to the nearest town, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I called my uncle, trying to explain what had happened, but my voice was shaking, and he just laughed it off, saying I had too much imagination. He said he hadn't put up any scarecrow. He said there had never been a scarecrow in that field. I went back to the cabin a few weeks later, with a friend, just to prove I wasn't crazy. The field was still empty, but as we were leaving, I noticed something stuck in the mud near the edge of the woods. A single faded flannel button, the same kind of button that had been on the scarecrow's shirt. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the worn edges. It was real. It had been real. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something was out there that night. Something that wasn't just a scarecrow. Something that had chosen me, for one terrifying Halloween night, to be its audience. The cabin, once a place of peaceful solitude, is now a place of lingering dread. A reminder that some things are better left unexplained, and some horrors, once witnessed, can never truly be unseen.